On ABC Radio Brisbane, Steve Austin.
Lovely to have you with me. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of August, 2017. This morning I have a question for you. I was talking about this with someone recently, but do you do much handwriting? You write a card, a note, a letter? I'll bet you don't. Maybe you do, and if so, did you find that your writing skills, your standard, had declined? Not many of us do it now. And the NAPLAN results show that writing skills, not necessarily not handwriting, but general writing skills, have been slowly, slightly declining since 2011. So we'll explore that in a moment with someone that runs a writers' club at one of Brisbane's schools. And this writers' club does a range of things. Apart from the pure joy of writing, it actually develops a whole range or a whole set of skills that you'll hear about in just a moment. We're talking about this today, but the latest NAPLAN results are out. Things look okay in some areas, except in the area of writing. So we'll explore that with my guest. What do you see with your child's ability to write something? Whether it be on a keyboard, a typewriter, or handwriting, dare I say it, handwriting. We had a discussion in the office this morning amongst myself and the producers, and one of them said, I've noticed that my handwriting has declined. Well, do you care if your child can handwrite? Give me a call. 1300 222 612 is the phone number. When was the last time you picked up a pen or pencil and actually manually wrote a letter or something longer? 1300 222 612 is the phone number. I'm fascinated to know your story. Did you find it hard if you did? And would the kids have performed better in the NAPLAN tests if they got to type their essays? Give me a call, 1300 222 612 is the phone number. Now, my next guest is a teacher, and she runs a writers' club. It's sort of famous in their own suburb, really, but around some parts of southeast Queensland. It's the Mount St Michael's Writers' Club, and Juliette Bentley is a teacher that runs the club, although in many ways the students do. Juliette Bentley, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Steve.
Let me get your reaction, first of all, to the NAPLAN results about writing overall, a slight, steady decline in writing skills overall.
I think that we have to keep remembering that it is only one day, one exam, and there are so many factors that can come into play there. Now, you might argue that that might be the case for a few students, not a large number. Writing is a key element of what we do every day within the schools. And I think the most important thing to see is that we keep a blend of handwriting and computer work, because there's evidence that you make better connections, mental connections, brain cognitive connections through the process of writing with a pen, on paper preferably. But
that's a fine motor skill movement.
It's a fine motor skill movement.
It does something deeper than you expect.
Yes, we tend to when we write, we tend to think about what we're about to write on the page. When we type, particularly if we're typing notes from lecture notes, etc., we don't retain the information in the same way. And if you go back later, you'll find that there's been a PhD study on this, and the psychologists found that when they had to type all their notes, they couldn't recall the information the same way, and they couldn't process it the same way. I'm not suggesting that you don't use computers in any way, shape or form, because I use them all the time. But we use a stylus. Every student in the school is given a stylus. It's named. They have their name on it, so they don't go missing. They're expensive bits of equipment. They're the shape of a proper pen, so they get to use those fine motor skills. What I'm finding, though, and I'm most concerned about, is cursive writing, because our young people are going to lose the ability to read cursive writing. And by having messy handwriting, as long as they're handwriting, they're able to process the different forms of A, for example. When you write cursively, we all write differently, but you're more likely to recognise the letters more effectively. So having handwriting is more effective in lots of ways than just being able to type and process that way.
So you wouldn't be too worried about the NAPLAN results themselves?
I think if you look at each year, it's a different thing each time, and that's just going to be the case. And we are moving toward an external exam, so students need to have the experience of that, and I think that's probably one of the best things about NAPLAN. They do get the opportunity to have that experience of working under those conditions. But in terms of the tests themselves, I do tend to think that it really is just a test in a day. And if you did it a week later, you might have very different results. If
you're just turn on your radio or your mobile phone or your digital radio, Juliette Bentley is my guest. She's a teacher. She's a teacher at Mount St Michael's School, and she runs the Mount St Michael's Writers Club. One of the things that came from someone who phoned us this morning is, would the children sitting for NAPLAN have performed better if they had the option of typing their answers? So a large amount of keyboard use in life and school now, but when they do the NAPLAN results, they're back to that manual form of, the hand and the pen or the hand and the pencil. Would that have changed the outcome?
Probably not. I think the reality is they've got a very short amount of time to do a piece of writing. It's no longer got a word limit on it. Once upon a time it did. They're still having to process. If they had time and time wasn't an issue, it might make a difference. But I don't think it makes a difference within the context of that test.
All right. Now, you're running a writers' club at Mount St Michael's School. What skills, what does it do for the brain, the developing and growing brain, to pursue for pleasure writing? What does it do?
What I found is I started the Writers' Club 8 years ago now, so I'm heading toward my 10 years, which is pretty fantastic. What I found was that the writing is important. The stories they write, the ideas they come across, the exploration of different things, and being able to choose a topic of interest. What I didn't expect, and which I think now is perhaps more important, are all the ancillary skills that come along with that. So they listen to each other. Their listening becomes particularly thoughtful and critical. They engage and they retain information. So if somebody's read a story, their story to them, they can go back and pinpoint a sentence early in the story, repeat it, analyse it, talk about it, make suggestions. So they're retaining information. The girls who are delivering their work are learning to speak, to deliver, and to enjoy the drama of their words and the impact of those words upon an audience. But the other things that I think are key, and these are actually going to be my topic of in my PhD candidature, is how Writers' Club has given a climate for social skill building, social capital, self-esteem, self-efficacy, and an authorial voice. They have people who actually want to listen to them. So that's really very important. And, of course, they have that sense of belonging, and the tribe is key to everything they do.
The tribe is key. What do you mean?
People need to belong. Writers, people assume, are people who work independently.
Yeah, I thought writing was a solitary experience.
No, not at all. It's a social experience. You need to have an audience. You need to see your words impact upon other people. And that passion and pleasure is what instills that passion in them. And they come every Friday. I mean, this is a 2-hour session every Friday afternoon, and I've had them, this, as I said, is my 8th year. I've had them, many of them, from grade 8 or 7 recently, and they stay. They don't go. And now I have a post-school writers' club that meets on the first Monday of every month, and these are the kids who've graduated. So I've got 26-year-olds coming.
I'm speaking with you today because the NAPLAN results are out, and parents, the reason why this was brought in by Julia Gillard originally is because parents have said, I can't tell where my child is in the schooling system. I can't tell how well they're doing and whether we need to work on some things. And so this is why we're talking so much about numeracy, literacy and writing. So if a parent is looking at, the NAPLAN results and the stories out today and they're hearing the results, what does the physical aspect, the motor skills aspect of writing with an implement do for a child's brain, their cognitive function, their development?
Studies have shown, I think it was a study out of Norway, showed that when students handwrite, they retain the information. it's like when they're reading, if they read out of a book, they're more likely to know on the page where different parts of the text are. They can return to them if they need to. But what it's doing is it's giving them the opportunity to, they're thinking as they write. And when you type, you don't tend to think.
So is physical writing a higher mental function, has a higher capacity for activating the brain?
Definitely.
It's a higher skills activity.
Yes, but the thing is, our curriculum is so full of material that we need speed. We have time as an issue. Typing is much faster than handwriting.
Yes.
And certainly when it comes to marking, it's an awful time saver for us, because obviously when you're trying to decipher a child's writing, it makes it a long process. But there was the whole mental process of putting the word to the page is really important. Yeah.
I spoke to you a couple of months back when a teacher phoned me out of the blue, was teaching in a classroom, a very experienced teacher who's a master teacher in the Queensland education system, and she rang me shocked. She said, "Steve, students can't read handwriting." And I went, "What do you mean they can't read handwriting? They can read, can't they?" She said, "Yes, but they can't read handwriting. They can't read cursive script." And I sort of said, "Well, doing the journalist thing, why does it matter? What does it care?" And she said, "Well, that means you can't read the original source document."
That's right.
And if you can't read a source document, and you can be told anything and you won't know if it's true or not. Because
That's
you
right.
can't read, say, the Australian Constitution or a historical document or letters from your grandfather from the front in World War I. If you can't read cursive writing, you're vulnerable.
Well, that's true. And I think that's really important. That's my point earlier about when we look at our handwriting, we all will write differently. We'll all shape our different letters differently. But because we all handwrite, well, adults tend to handwrite, you'll see that you will recognise the letters more quickly. Now, they found in China, I think it was in 1990, they started using QWERTY typing. And their students, there's a radical decrease in their capacity to read handwriting and the capacity to read, because it was that inability to recognise the letters.
So the more predictive text or QWERTY keyboards take over
That
the
causes
function,
an issue.
that's actually lowering human ability to read, interpret and write.
Yes, if they're looking at a handwritten document. Obviously, if it's typed, it doesn't matter.
1300 222 612 is the phone number. Can your child handwrite? Or do you care if your child can? I'm keen to know what you've noticed about the process of writing. You can give me a call, 1300 222 612 is the phone number. Juliette Bentley is a teacher at Mount St Michael's Writers Club. Are there any other schools picking up on the idea that you've been running for 8 years now and having writers' clubs?
I've had a few schools come to visit me and to actually spend some time watching what I do on a Friday afternoon. But in terms of having them start, we've got a few that are burgeoning. Keebra Park is certainly looking at doing it themselves, and I've always made myself available to help groups when they start. Mm-hmm. We've got a new launch of the Write the World annual will be happening in September. There's an awful lot going on. The thing with writing, though, you've got to remember, is Socrates, 2,500 years ago, thought that writing would be a problem and that it would erode the memory and that people would think they had knowledge rather than have the real thing. So, calculators did the same thing.
Favoured rhetoric.
Yeah, so he did. So
and he was wrong because writing improves the memory.
Well, that's right. Possibly. Not having been around 2,500 years ago, I don't know what I'd have been like. My memory's not brilliant at the best of times. But yes, it's this new technology thing has to be negotiated, and it can't just be an all or nothing. It has to be a blend. You've got to have technology because that's where we're going. But we can't lose the skill, the artistry in the writing of handwriting. And our school recently just did a massive letter writing campaign. So we are doing it in the classroom as well.
Thanks for coming in. Juliette Bentley heads the Mount St Michael's Writers Club at a school here in Brisbane. Can your child handwrite? Do you care if your child can handwrite, whether they've got those fine motor skills, the abilities to hold a pen or a pencil, and as a result read someone else's handwriting? give me a call and tell me what you've noticed. 1300 222 612 is the phone number. You can call now, 1300 222 612.